Hi, it's Dwyer here to talk about the upcoming novelty match between James Lights Out Toney and Randy Couture. Now, we can thank Tim Sylvia for this fight because Tim Sylvia, the former heavyweight UFC MMA champion, fought Merciless Ray Mercer and got knocked out about a year ago in 9 seconds. And that fight, which is up on YouTube, where Sylvia basically came in cold and Mercer, former boxer, hit him with a pretty good right hand flush on the side of his face, knocking him out. It's a one-punch fight. Seems to have spawned the folklore that boxing and MMA, mixed martial arts, are the same sport, and that fighting is fighting, and that boxers are actually viable as opponents against MMA athletes. Nothing could be further from the truth. Keep in mind, all that Ray Mercer fight proved was that one man with a good punch, if he hits the other guy upside the head hard enough, might knock that guy out. There were no MMA techniques at all in that fight. If you look at a tape of that 9 second fight, Sylvia does nothing other than kick very lightly at Ray Mercer. I think he miscalculated Mercer. I think he didn't realize that that was Mercer's only chance of winning that fight. Well, let me say, I think that James Toney has even less chance. Keep in mind, Ray Mercer was a heavyweight for a very long time. He fought Lennox Lewis in the mid-1990s, gave Lewis all he could handle. He knocked out Tommy Morrison, who was a very good heavyweight at one time. Mercer's nickname, Merciless, comes from his punch, right? He's a heavyweight. He's not a middleweight who then has gained weight over the years to become a heavyweight, right? James Lights Out Toney, really the biggest thing with him, punching-wise, is his nickname. Toney fought Roy Jones at 168. Toney has never been a huge puncher. He's a guy who really took you out with stellar counter-punching technique, right? Not Ray Mercer-type punching ability, but counter-punching technique. And let me just point out that that's exactly the kind of technique that's going to fail in a fight against an MMA fighter, right? This is a completely different sport. James Toney is accustomed to a rule structure where his opponent and he cannot use their legs. Spacing is key to counterpunching, right? Toney, when he counterpunches, knows that the worst the other guy can do to him legally is punch him. So Toney can set up a counterpunch. In MMA, the guy could literally grapple with you. The guy could take you to the ground. The guy can do things that render counterpunching completely irrelevant. And let's think it through. I mean, the distance, what you're expecting, just having to deal with feet. Those are all things that, quite frankly, James Toney is not equipped to do. A punching stance, a boxer stance, is literally one of the worst possible stances someone can have in MMA. I think Toney's only chance in this fight is an early knockout. I'm talking about in the first or second rounds, right? Very early. And even that chance is very slight. Randy Couture is 18-10. Keep in mind that 16 of his 28 lifetime fights, 16 of those fights have been title fights. Not only that, keep in mind that Randy Couture is fully aware of the mistake made by Tim Sylvia. The last thing he's going to do in front of a boxer is to walk up to him with his hands down like Tim Sylvia did. Also, let's look hard at James Toney. Right, Toney's in his 40s. I would argue that Randy Couture in his late 40s is in much better shape than James Toney. This fight does not have a weight limit because, of course, James Toney's people didn't want the weight limit. Randy Couture was prepared to go as low as 205 because Randy Couture right now, as I make this video, is in tip-top shape, as he always is. Toney was last in Ring Magazine's top 10 pound for pound in 2003. That's the first term of former President George W. Bush. The last top 10 opponent that James Toney beat was John Ruiz in 2005. Even that was 6 years ago. We know that James Toney's skills have deteriorated. Just compare and contrast his 2006 narrow loss to Sam Peter with the rematch, which took place in 2007, where Toney got beaten by a wide margin, right? Against the same opponent, James Toney was not able to maintain the intensity. Also, in 2008, in his last meaningful match, he fought Freza Kendo. That was his last meaningful win. But of course, there are many who believe that that was a gift decision. They question whether that was even a win. And so let's just say that I know that this is being advertised as Randy Couture against a future boxing Hall of Famer. I'll agree. James Toney is a future boxing Hall of Famer, but it's really based on what he did up until 2006. It's not based on anything that James Toney has done in the last 5 years. James Toney, quite frankly, was a fading boxer. He's not a lead puncher. He's a counter puncher. I have no idea how he's going to be able to do that on his back. If Randy Couture takes him down to the ground, as Couture always does, I don't see how James Toney is going to be able to compete. Let me also point out, too, that Tim Sylvia lost his heavyweight title to Randy Couture, right? Sylvia is a huge man. He's bigger than Michael Grant, who just fought Tomas Ademic. In other words, Randy Couture has been in the ring with much bigger athletes. Randy Couture, quite frankly, has dealt with guys who are much better MMA fighters than James Toney. In the scheme of things, Randy Couture, quite frankly, has fought much tougher matches. I'll be stunned. I'll be stunned if this makes it to the third round. Let me know what you think. I think this is more of a gimmick. I can't begrudge any professional athlete, given the risks involved with taking a payday. That's what it looks like James Toney is doing here. The only similarity between MMA and boxing is that they're called fighting, both of them. That's it. This, to me, is akin to an American football player suddenly deciding he wants to play in the Premier League in the UK in soccer. It just doesn't work. As a longtime fan of James Toney, I'm just hoping he doesn't get too embarrassed. Let me also point out, too, that there are some boxers with much better feet than James Toney, right? Toney's not blessed with quick feet. You saw that in the Roy Jones fight when he faced a fighter who has quick feet. Toney looked like he was standing in cement. A guy who does have quick feet, David Haye, actually as part of his training regimen, has actually tried to dabble in MMA. A lot of these boxers are athletes, and they will fool around with different disciplines and sports to keep in shape. And all I could say is there's a great interview up online right now where heavyweight champion David Haye says that, and keep in mind, Haye hits harder than James Toney, and he's faster than James Toney with better legs than James Toney. David Haye basically says that, once he's on the ground, he can't get any leverage for his punches. His punch leverage is gone, and he calls James Toney delusional for taking this fight. I agree with David Haye. I think James Toney is delusional. Let's hope that this boxing great, and he is a great. Keep in mind, he did win the heavyweight title against John Ruiz, only to be stripped after the fight. Let's hope that this great doesn't get too embarrassed. He's way in over his head against Randy Couture. If you're betting big money, I would straddle it with James Toney by KO simply as an outlier, if James Toney gets lucky like Ray Mercer did, I don't see that happening. I think Randy Couture takes this fight, but I would straddle it. Couture to win against Toney by KO just to be safe. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube, and visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for watching.